Hello students, this is Sanjana from Computer Science Department. In this class, we are going to discuss about federated identity management and electronic mail security. So now let's get into our topic. Now let us see about this federated identity management. Federated identity management is a concept which is relatively new concept. It is going to deal with the use of the common identity management such that the scheme across these multiple enterprises and some numerous applications supporting many thousands, even millions of users. So many millions of users also going to follow this federated identity management such that it is going to provide the security as well as safety for the data. So these the following are the principal elements and an identity man of this identity management system. So first one is authentication. We have already know about this authentication. Authentication is the confirmation that user corresponding to the username that is going to be provided here. And next one is authorization, means granting access to the specific services or resources based upon this authentication. And next one is accounting. Accounting is the process of logging the access and the authorization. Next one is provisioning. Provisioning is allotment of the users in the system. Next one is workflow automation. Workflow automation is a movement of the data in the business. So when it comes to this federated identity management, it is completely new concept which is going to deal with the use of the common identity management scheme across these multiple enterprises. So the numerous applications and what are the applications that are going to support under this, even thousands and millions of users are going to follow as the principal elements of the identity management system. So first one is authentication. Authentication means that the confirmation that the user corresponds to the username that is going to be provided. Next one is authorization. Authorization means the granting access to the specific services and or resources based upon the authentication. Next one is accounting. Accounting is the process for logging the access and authorization. For next one is provisioning. Provisioning is the enrollment of the users in that particular system. Next one is workflow automation. We have already know about that. It is a movement of data in the business process. So when it comes to a delegated, this another concept called delegated administration. This is also one of the future of this one. It is a use of the role based access such that which can be used to control the grant permission, which can be used to control the control or granting the permissions here. So when it comes to a password synchronization, it is creating a process for the single or reducer sign. So if it is a suppose if you have taken this example for the generic identity management architecture, suppose it is the identity provided which is going to provide the identity for particular kind of users. So he is the identity provider which it is having some identity provider is having some identity control interface. And next one is attribute, it is having some attribute locators. Next one is principal authentication. Next one is identifier translation. So these are the principles which are going to authenticate or manage their identity elements. So the principal is going to communicate with this attribute service. So principal is going to provide the attributes here, and this attribute service is going to take the is going to take the attributes that are provided by the administrator. And the data consumer, here the data consumer is a person which is going to communicate the data between the this identifier translation and data consumer, such that the data consumers obtain the identifiers of the attributes references, such that from this data consumer, the data consumers apply the references to obtain the attributes of the data. So this is the generic identity management architecture here. It is going so whenever it is going to create a process for the single sign-on, it is going to reduce the sign-on. So if it comes under the identity provider, this is a, if you consider this one, this is a source domain. This is the first step from the user. It is going to communicate from the user. It is going to communicate with the identity provider. And the next step is this identity provider is going to communicate with the administrator. And again the third step is again after the communicating with the administrator, in this third step it is going to deal with the service provider. Finally it is fine, that is the communication between the destination domain and the user. So the first step is whenever the end user suppose here the end user browser or other application engages in an authentication dialog with the identity provider in the same domain. Here the end user also provides the attribute values associated with the user identity. And next one, some attributes associated with the identity such as the allowable roles that may be provided by an administrator in the same domain. And the next thing is a service provider in the remote domain which the user wishes to access the obtains identity information. And next one is authentication information and associated attributes from the identity provider in the source domain. And next, the fourth step is the service provider opens the session with the remote user and enforces the access control restrictions based upon the user identity and the attributes. So this is a figure that is based upon the federated identity operation. So this is the in these four steps, the first step is the identity provided from the source to the domain, from the user to the identity provider, and the next step is from the identity provider to the administrator, and next one is from the identity provider to the service provider, and next one is the service provider to the user. So this is a process that will be happened in the federated identity operation. So if you have considered this electronic mail security, whenever email is the today's trend that we are daily, you are going to, if you want to send mail or if you mail daily, you are using this email operation. So in that email, if you want to provide security for that particular mail, let us see how we are going to provide the security for that particular mail. Okay, see, if we want to protect the protection of the email from the unauthorized access, and the inspection is known as the electronic privacy. So there are mainly two methods for providing the security for the electronic mails, that is pretty good privacy. First one is pretty good privacy. In virtually in all the distributed environments, the electronic mail is the most heavily used in the network based application. So if it is a pretty good privacy, then it is used in the data encryption and the decryption computer program that provides the privacy and the authentication for data communication. It was created by Phil Zimmerman in 1991. So here it is electronic mail security. In this electronic mail security, the protection of email from unauthorized access and inspection is known as the electronic privacy. There are mainly two methods for providing the security for electronic mails. First one is pretty good privacy, and next one is MIME process. In this pretty good privacy, in virtually distributed environments, electronic mail is the most heavily used network-based application. So pretty good privacy is a data encryption and decryption computer program that provides the confidentiality and authentication for the data communication. It was created by Phil Zimmerman in 1991. So the PGP is a open source, freely available software package for the email security. It provides authentication through the use of the digital signature. So confidentiality through the use of the symmetric block encryption and the compression using the zip algorithm, and email compatibility using the radix 64 encoding scheme. These are the process that is going to be held in this PGP. So whenever it is PGP incorporate tools for developing the public key, the trust model and the public key certificate. By using this trust model and the public key certificate management, it is going to be provided. Um, PGP, it is a freely available software package for the email security. Just for email security, it is going to be provided for the software package, and it provides the authentication through it. It is going to provide the authentication for the use of the digital signature. So confidentiality through the use of the symmetric block encryption, and the compression using this zip algorithm, and email compatibility using the radix 64 encoding scheme here. So PGP incorporates a tool for developing a public key trust model and public key certificate management. So if you have observed this pretty good privacy model, pretty good privacy has grown explosively. Now it is widely used because of the why it is used because why it is widely used. These are the following reasons. Let us see. It is available for free. It is available free worldwide in the versions that run on a variety of platforms, including Windows, Unix, Macintosh OS, and many more. In many more OS operating systems, it is free in the worldwide versions. So such that freely we can use at free of cost. We can usually use that service. So if you observed, it is based upon the algorithms that have survived the extensive public review, are considered extremely secure. Specifically, this package includes the RSA, DSS, and Diffie-Hellman for the public key encryption. This CAST 128 IDEA and 3DES for the symmetric encryption, and SHA1 for the hash coding. So it has a wide range of applicability from the corporations that wish to select and enforce a standard scheme for encrypting the files and messages to the individuals who wish to communicate securely with others worldwide over the internet and other networks. So it was not developed nor it is controlled by the governmental or standards organization. For those with an instinctive distrust of the establishment, this makes PGP very attractive. That is pretty good privacy, very attractive. So, pretty good privacy is now an internet standard track for the RFC 3156. So, MIME securely with the open, nevertheless, PGP still has an arrow of an establishment endeavor. So by providing the authentication by using the pretty good privacy, the sequence steps for providing the authentication by using the pretty good privacy is: the sender can create the message. SHA1 is used to generate the 160-bit hash code of the message. Here the hash code is encrypted with the RSA using the sender's private key, and the result is prepended to the message. So the receiver uses the RSA with the sender's public key to decrypt the and recover the hash code. So the receiver generates a new hash code for the messages and compares it with the decrypted hash code. If these two are matched, the message is accepted as authentic. Here, if these two can be matched, we can say the message is accepted as the authentic. So this is the authentication policy. This is source A and this is the destination B. So this is the message and this is the hash code that we are going to apply here. This is the encrypted policy, and this is how we are going to send the message here. After sending this message, first of all, after performing the encryption, this encrypted message is again it is decrypted here and it is securely sent to the destination B. And here the comparison is held from the original message to the received message. Why? Because whether the message what that is sent by the sender is matched perfectly with this message or not, these two are also compared ones here. Where KS is a session key used in the symmetric encryption scheme, and PRA is a private key of the user A used in the public key encryption scheme, and PUA is a public key of a user A used in the public key encryption scheme, and EP is a public key encryption, and DP is a public key decryption, and EC is a symmetric encryption, and DC is a symmetric decryption, and H is the hash function. This is the symbol used for the concatenation, and Z is the compression using the zip algorithm. We have already know why you are going to compress the files. If you want to send the files, if that file size is too large to send, then before sending it, if we perform the compression for that particular file, then it will be sent very easily. Why? Because if the size is less, then the speed also will be increased. Next one, R64, the conversion to the Radix 64 ASCII format. R64 is the conversion of Radix 64 to the ASCII format. And next one, so if we have observed this confidentiality using the pretty good policy. So in this pretty good policy, see how confidential the data is sent. See, this is the message here, that message is sending here, that for that message some encrypted code is added here, and after adding that encrypted code, it is going to generate some key. After that, it is going to send by the send source A. Again here, for that particular message and for that key, it is the encryption is going to be performed here. And here also at the destination, that particular message is received here, and that for that particular message we have to decrypt that one, and again we have to perform the inverse operation for that, and finally it is going to whatever the message it is that we have get, that is the displayed message here. So these are the steps for providing the confidentiality. First one, the sender generates a message and a random 128-bit number to be used as a session key for this message only. And second one, the message is encrypted using CAST128 with the session key. The session key is encrypted with the RSA using the recipient's public key and is prepended to the message. Fourth one, the receiver uses the RSA with the private key to decrypt and recover the session key. And fifth one is the session key is used to decrypt that message. So these are the steps that we are going to provide, providing the confidentiality. These are different types of steps that we are going to provide the confidentiality here. Here the first one, the sender generates a message and a random 128-bit number is used as the session key for this message itself. And next one, the message is encrypted by using the CAST128 with the session key. Next one is the session key is encrypted with the RSA using the recipient's public key and is prepended to the message. So if the receiver uses the RSA with its private key to decrypt and recover the session key, finally the session key is used to decrypt that particular message. So this is the function, and for that function what are the algorithm that we are going to use, and this is the description for that algorithm. Okay, if it is a digital signature function, these are the algorithms that we are going to use here. The first one is DSS algorithm, and next one is SHA algorithm, and next one is the RSA algorithm, or RSA or SHA algorithm. So here for this, the description is a hash code of the message is created using the SHA1. This message digest is encrypted using the DSS or RSA with the sender's private key and included with the message. So the next one is message encryption function. For this message encryption function, the cache or ID or triple DES with the different Hellman or RSA is going to be used here. A message is encrypted using a CAST or IDEA or with the one-time session key generated by the sender. The session key is encrypted here by using the Diffie-Hellman or RSA with the recipient public key and included with this message. So if it is a compression function, if it is a compression function, the zip algorithm is going to used here. So a message may be compressed for the storage or transmission using the zip code. And next one is if it is a email compatibility function, radix 64 algorithm is going to be used to provide the transparency for the email applications, and encrypted messages may be converted to an ASCII string using the radix 64 conversion. So this is a pretty good policy for both authentication and confidentiality. So this is for confidentiality and authentication. This is a message that we are going to send. This is the hash function, and this is the encrypted message, and this is after that the key is generated, and again it will be provide confidentiality. This symbol represents the confidentiality, and that message is to be sent to the receiver, and for that it is going to perform this inverse operation, and for that the encryption is also performed here, and finally it is going to compare with that original message. So the next one is, after a pretty good policy, it is a secure multi-purpose and internet mail extension, that is a multi-purpose internet mail extension is the full abbreviation for this MIME. S means secure. So it is a security enhancement to the MIME internet email standard that is based upon the technology from RSA data security. MIME is for industry standard for the commercial and organizational use. So it is defined in the number of documents, that is RFC 2630, RFC 2632, and RFC 2633. In number of based upon number of documents it is going to use here. The multi-purpose internet mail extension is an extension of the RFC framework that is intended to address some of the problems and the limitations of the use of the simple mail transfer protocol. So this is the functionality of the SMIME. In terms of the general functionality, SMIME is very similar to the pretty good policy. Both offer the ability to sign and or encrypt the messages. In this subsection, we briefly summarize that capability provides the following functions here. First one is enveloped data. This consists of the encrypted content of any type and encrypted content encryption keys for the one or more recipients. And next one is signed data. A digital signature is formed by taking the message digest of the content to be signed and then encrypted that with the private key of the signer. And next one, the content plus signature are then encoded by using the base 64 encoding. A signed data message can only be viewed by a recipient with the MIME capability. As with signed data, a digital signature of the content is formed. However, in this case, only digital signature is encoded using the base 64. So in the signed and enveloped data, the signed only and encrypted only entries may be nested so that the encrypted data may be signed and signed data, or also clear signed data may be encrypted.